when we're talking about dreams, we're really talking about a mindset. We're talking about an internal attitude, and that's what drives us.
Mm-hmm.
The reason goal setting is so often ineffective is because it's misaligned with our dream. It's misaligned with our whys. And the whys, those big motivators, that's what keeps us pushing forward. So goal setting becomes super valuable when you learn to align a goal with a mindset, with a dream.
Hey, you leader, entrepreneur, business owner, solopreneur, whatever you call yourself, we know you're a visionary business builder, wealth seeker looking to combine a passion for doing good with leading consciously. It's time to shift from a traditional focus of pure wealth accumulation to one that integrates well-being and fulfillment. This is the Conscious Edge podcast, and I'm Alicia St. Germain, entrepreneur and coach. Along with my friend and wellness advocate, Jonathan Duggar, we're diving into what it means to embody radical self-acceptance while still evolving to lead with compassion and kindness. We're sharing our own experiences and expertise as we unpack imposter syndrome, perfectionism, procrastination, and all the other things that lead to burnout and keep you from experiencing pure joy, business growth, and maximum impact. This is a safe and supportive space to explore what it means to be a human creating wealth and building a business. You're here for a purpose, and it's time to shine your light. So here we go. Welcome back to the Conscious Edge podcast. I'm your host, Alicia St. Germain. It's really funny that I have a name that I can't get out of my own mouth. As you can hear, Jonathan is here with me, my regular co-host. And how are you recovering from getting back from Italy?
Still playing a little catch up, but the main piece of recovery has been getting used to Americanized food again.
Oh, explain that.
Well, the EU in general, but Italy specifically, just their food is just so much fresher and doesn't have all the stuff done to it that unfortunately happens to our food. Even when you try to eat very clean in the US, it's quite challenging. So my system has rebelled a little bit. Physically and psychologically related to that. So,
that just goes with it.
Yep.
So if you are just joining us, we started this podcast because we wanted to be able to help more people connect to their purpose and passions in life and align that with what they do for money. And it's been a really wonderful journey. And so we are on episode number 31. Now at this point. So if you enjoy today's episode, I know, right? Every week we do this. Every now and then we check in on what episode we're on. And it's always so incredible to me that.
Yeah, me too. I'm surprised every time I hear it. It's like, what? How did that happen?
I know. So if you enjoy today's episode, make sure you tap the follow button or hit subscribe, whatever you see there as part of your listening app so that you hear the new episodes that we produce weekly. Make sure you take a moment and leave a review because it really does help us reach more people. We're on a mission to spread more joy and help people really find what lights them up. So today, what we wanted to talk about was a more practical application of what we were talking about 2 episodes ago. We were presenting this whole idea that why goals are not maybe working for you. And one of the very beginning episodes, I talked about the 4 unhealthy goal habits I see. And in that episode, I had to go back and listen to it because I wanted to see how it counteracted with what we talked about in that episode. And we're really saying the same thing from 2 different angles. And my statement in that one was really that goals have value in that they set you in a direction. But if you are putting so much weight on the goal that you're judging yourself based on it, that it can actually be very demotivating. And so I'm going to link that episode. I'll link the most recent episode we did. And then today, just really diving into demonstrating the difference between maybe a dream or intentions and the actual tangible goals that we have been taught to set. So, Jonathan, can you give a little, I know you have dove into some of the research around goal setting and maybe why you think differently about goals than you did before.
Again, I want to be clear that there is a place and time for setting goals in specific ways and setting incremental short-term and long-term goals. But often we do it in ineffective ways, and we do it in harmful ways that don't stay aligned with our core values, that don't stay aligned with the context of our life, what we've got going on in any given moment. And also, we as a culture sometimes overlook the specificity of a goal related to us and our own ever-changing focus and desires. So I started thinking about, and this came up in the podcast that you just referenced, the idea that our culture has lost some of its ability to dream and dream big, or has de-emphasized the value of that.
Where, you mentioned it being like a joke almost now in our society about dreams.
Yeah. So somebody talks about dreaming, well, I dream that I could be the kind of person that is always looking for opportunity to give back and to help and to leave a place better and a person better than I found them. That could be seen as a dream because it's high level. It's not super specific. And often I've even heard and read books and read literature where it says, well, that's useless. That type of thinking is useless because it doesn't have any specificity around it. You don't have a time frame. You don't have a specific destination. You don't have a specific outcome. It's not defined as a goal. So it's useless. Well, I differ. And I think a lot of experts would differ as well in that, because when we're talking about dreams, we're really talking about a mindset. We're talking about an internal attitude. And that's what drives us. Mm-hmm. The reason goal setting is so often ineffective is because it's misaligned with our dream. It's misaligned with our whys. And the whys, those big motivators, that's what keeps us pushing forward. So goal setting becomes super valuable when you learn to align a goal with a mindset, with a dream. So if you're not comfortable with the word dream, if that seems too fluffy to you, then change it to mindset or change it to attitude. Mm-hmm. So I have a mindset that I would like this. I'm setting the intent.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing it goes back to things we've talked about many times on this podcast, or I brought it up, be, do, have. And so much of what goals are around is what you do. And what you're really talking about is the way you do them and the being of like how you go through this world. There's those people that walk into the room and they've got a way that they be that changes the energy in the room in a good way or a not good way.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's a lot of when we were prepping for this podcast specifically, that was a lot of what I was really looking at is the essence in which we were.
I like that word.
Bringing to what we're doing in the world, the essence you bring. So we came up with some really specific examples, and we wanted to go through and demonstrate with the wellness wheel in mind. Jonathan, you use the wellness wheel. We've talked about it in past podcasts before, but for anybody who is just catching up, just remind them, a little bit more about what the wellness wheel is and how you use it.
So the wellness wheel is basically a diagram that compartmentalizes sections of how we live. So sometimes we think about wellness because of the word well, how we use it in our language, as simply referring to maybe mental and physical health. So diet, exercise, those kind of things. Well, wellness actually is the balancing of multiple components. And you'll see diagrams that have anywhere up to 12 different sections of this wheel that I'm referring to. Typically, I think of it in terms of we have a physical health, we have a relationship health, we have a spiritual health, we have a financial health. You could say we have a professional health. So all of those components, and again, you'll see sections that have compartmentalized a bit more, broken down a bit more, but that encompasses those areas primarily. So when I talk about wellness, I'm referring to a balancing of all of those pieces of the pie.
So we came up with some examples that you might be experiencing or might be important to you in your real life. These are all things that both of us have had clients come to us with the goal to improve, the intention to improve an area. They have the intention to improve an area of their life. And then the way that they set goals oftentimes to try to achieve that. And what we want to go through to kind of discuss what happens when we set goals and we put too much weight on achieving those goals and how it can create some unhealthy effects, some things, some unintended consequences, I think is what I want to say.
Too much weight on the outcome and too much rigidity and lack of flexibility around the path to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's get to the first one.
Okay. So the first example I was thinking more in line of, because we've talked a lot about mindfulness and I've spoken some about meditation, and a lot of folks have, and we know meditation and mindfulness affects components of physical, mental health, emotional health, financial health, all the aspects of the wellness wheel. So that's why I like to bring it up often. So the intention would be, I intend, or the attitude you could even say, or mindset, I intend to cultivate a sense of calm and balance in my everyday life. And then your rigid goal might revolve around meditation, and you say, I will meditate for 30 minutes every day.
Yeah. I've heard that so many times.
Yeah.
I'm going to meditate for 30 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it is. And I think what I want to say for anybody who's had that is, how's that working for you? I feel like Dr. Phil,
exactly.
But like,
well, how many of you just had a guttural reaction when I said that out loud? I will meditate for 30 minutes every day. Some of you probably went, yeah, right. Where am I going to find 30 minutes to meditate?
30 minutes to meditate.
Or there may have even been some of you that in your head, and you may have reined it in really quickly, but in your head you said, what a waste of 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
That's such a good example, though. If you had some sort of response, if you felt that in your body, you felt that in your mind, that is such a good example of misalignment. Your mindset is misaligned with your goal.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to focus on that intention first, and then you figure out how to go about it. Because the reality is meditation is whatever you make of it.
Mm-hmm.
I very rarely sit in one spot and meditate for more than 3 to 5 minutes at a time. Now, there are exceptions to that. I have some self-compassion meditation, some mindfulness work that I do that is more of a practice thing where I'm practicing a skill. But some of my best meditation, which meditation, you could just talk about it as it's a place you find peace, how you find balance, how you recharge. One of the best ways I meditate is driving down the road with my windows open and just feeling the air on my face and maybe listening to music, or being out amongst the trees, walking around, eating a good meal and paying attention to the flavors and the smells. And
it reminds me, as you're talking, what I'm thinking back to is a story that you tell about, I want to say it was pretty early on into your meditation sort of journey. You know which one I'm talking about?
The Buddhist monk one?
Yeah. And how often we decide based on societal norms what it should look like. And then we set our goals based on what it should look like versus what actually achieves the intention.
Exactly.
And so I think you should just briefly, like, that's a side of you people don't really know, like how far you've come.
So just as context, I guess, I have always had some challenges with distractibility, and, it probably could be easily diagnosed as ADD and in the past ADHD. I was the kid that on the report card back in the day when they gave out paper report cards, there was a checkbox that said like cannot sit still or often disruptive or physically disruptive or talks too much. Well, I wasn't the talks too much kid, but I had a hard time sitting still and sometimes still do. That's become less apparent these days. But so one of my rounds of graduate school, I had the amazing opportunity to study meditation and stillness. It was actually a workshop on stillness, and the Buddhist definition of stillness is pretty far reaching, related to physical and emotional and mental and spiritual. And I got to study with two Buddhist monks. And part of that study was being still, meditating, eyes closed, emptying your mind. And within the first hour of the first day, I knew I was in trouble. I mean, it was, oh my gosh, talk about a struggle. And I had thought about dropping the workshop, but I had, after the first day, one of the fellas sensed that I was really, really struggling. And he encouraged me to stick with it. And he laid the disclaimer that meditation was different for everybody and there was no perfect way. They were teaching something that worked for them and that it may or may not work for me. And that's okay. So with that permission, I guess I did better. But so went through the whole series, practiced, and I practiced diligently, just like I was learning a new skill in a sport or something else. I did my practice, frustrated all the way, but I did my practice. 10 minutes a day, up to 15 minutes a day, and the goal was to get to where you could sit still or be still for 45 minutes, which was the length of our class, or 55 minutes, something like that. So the very last day, our final exam was to do that. We had to sit or lay and be still, slow our breathing, clear our mind for 45 minutes. So when your 45 minutes was up, they would come and tap you and you passed the class. That was basically it. So I'm there and I'm probably at the 30-minute mark and I am starting to struggle. I'm feeling my feet moving, my legs starting to, I'm just really getting antsy. And I'm thinking about how antsy I am. And I'm thinking about, I know I've got more time to go. I'm not quite there yet. And then I feel somebody tap me on the forehead. And I'm laying down, by the way, because I knew I couldn't do this sitting in a chair. My legs would definitely be bouncing and making noise. So one of the instructors came and tapped me on the forehead, and I opened my eyes and he had a big grin on his face. And he goes, 45 minutes, very still. And then he tapped me on the forehead and he said, but not in here. It's like still body, not still mind. And boy, did he have that pegged. And he's like, that's okay. You still passed it. But the conversation after that was about what my version of meditation would probably look like. And he's like, your mind's never going to be still. That's just not how you work. So when someone says clear your mind, you being able to focus on a path is how you clear your mind. He's like, your clear mind looks different or feels different than other people's. And that was life-changing for me. Like that gave me permission to find my own path, to find my own way. And I still do that. I still look for different ways to do that. So
like create a podcast where you tell people to find their own way.
Exactly.
Redefine wealth.
Exactly. And then it's all about the path, the journey, and not necessarily about the destination.
Yep. Oh. I love that. I always love that story. And I think that it fits so perfectly for what we're talking about because, again, we define things in a very specific way. And that's our intention, is to give you some pretty specific examples of how the goal and the intention the goal can be self-sabotaging, essentially.
Yep.
Okay. So what's the next one that you had come up with?
I said the intention or the mindset would be, I intend to strengthen my relationships through better communication, better and open communication. Mm-hmm. So the idea that, again, that one's a little more specific. So I wanted to show that, an intention can have a little more specificity around it. So, because there's lots of ways you can strengthen your relationships. So I tagged it with open communication. So improving communication. But a rigid goal around that would be, I will have weekly dinner with my friends.
Mm-hmm.
And you could put that around, I'm going to do something on a regular basis that's directly involved in social interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you lock into something that's that specific, all of a sudden it becomes a chore, and it becomes a planning issue, and it becomes a scheduling issue. And well, so-and-so is not in town right now, or because we've locked into a rigid format with an expected outcome.
Mm-hmm.
So, which probably for most of us as busy adults, it's not realistic.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that push and pull, so we sometimes call it dissonance, of setting a goal outside of a context or a framework that actually is realistic for your life, for how you live and how other people live.
The other thing I think is problematic with that goal is that it is dependent on other people showing up in a specific way for you to hit your goal.
Exactly.
And so that's not only are you putting pressure on yourself, now you're putting pressure on other people who have things happening in their lives. And so when we shift over to the intention around open communication and thinking about what could that look like, it can look so many different ways.
Absolutely. And a lot of it has to do with, so when you're adjusting an intention or setting an intention or a mindset that maybe is more about personal growth or personal evolution, you want to look at those things that are challenging or struggles for yourself. Doesn't involve anybody else, for you. So like maybe there's a core group of friends that you should do a better job at keeping in contact with. And we have so many easy ways to reach out these days. Email, Facebook, text, WhatsApp. There's no excuses for not reaching out. So that doesn't mean there's necessarily a reciprocity from that. But the point is developing this mindset of open communication. So that comes from you. So sending on a regular basis just a quick hello, or hope you're doing well, or hope the week's treating you well to a person. That might be the first step in getting that process, getting that mindset, that mind shift happening.
Mm-hmm.
And what you'll find is when you start making those shifts, some of the things that maybe are a little more rigorous in their planning or in the development actually start to occur naturally. It's almost like an organic process, an organic outcome. You reach out to somebody 3 or 4 times, and all of a sudden they're reciprocating, and they feel a sense and a need to get together in person. So they help with the planning. It's like, you know what? I'm going to be in town on this day. Let's have lunch, or whatever it is. And it becomes a natural evolution, an organic evolution of a mindset or an intention that you've been working
planting.
towards.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Or you could be like Jonathan and I and talk on 3 different modes of communication all in one day about different things
at the same time sometimes.
Like I'm sending him like a funny thing from Instagram while we're over here talking in Facebook Messenger about what we're going to talk about on the podcast. And then maybe I'll text him about coming to town, like, yep, we do that.
Yeah.
Open communication.
Have to feed my ADD once in a while.
So just like we were thinking about, even from a business perspective for us, we had a goal to do a retreat for a long time. We're going to do a retreat. We're going to do a retreat. We're going to do a retreat. And we kept pushing it off, pushing it off, pushing it off. We said, like, what's the intention here? Like, why do we want to do this retreat? And it was really about being able to do something together where we got to help people together. We got to collaborate. And we know, like, when we get together in person, there's just a different energy than when we do things online. And I think a lot of people are really missing that in-person energy. And so our intention was to create a space where people could come together, Jonathan and I are both very clear that what you do for money gets to be fun and enjoyable, fill you up, make a difference in the world, serve a purpose. And we want to share that with other people because we're both doing that. We're both living that. And we want to hang out with people who want that too. And so instead of planning this retreat, we're going to do a retreat and host 10 people and have it on this date. We said, you know what? Let's just start talking about this now. And so we started a podcast. And
look where that led.
The goal. So perfectly what you were just demonstrating about the communication piece, like if you actually just take action on the intention, that the goal will actually start to facilitate itself. And so here we are, February 19th through 23rd, hosting 10 people in Phoenix, Arizona for a retreat. So if you want to come, you let us know if we have spots available. By the time this comes out, we'll probably be close to sold out, if not already. But if there are spots available and that interests you, come on down. We would love that. But I love how...
Absolutely.
I mean, we put that goal off for several years.
Oh, yeah. Again, you always find a reason to shift, to change, to move, to push it out because it's not necessarily in that point in time aligned with the intention. You're not clear on the intention. So the more clear you get on the intention, the easier the goal becomes to facilitate and to adjust as needed based on growing the intention, strengthening the intention.
Yeah. So I think that's really just so cool how I always like to use that real life example for people to see, oh, okay, that's how this happens. And it was very much in flow.
Yeah.
This whole put together and process. And it's been so peaceful to create. And even putting the credit card down to pay for the retreat house, it was like, yeah, okay, this is already done. This is already happening. There was no anxiety. My friends who also plan retreats were like, really? You had no anxiety? I'm like, no, like nothing, just happened. It's already there.
It's
pretty cool.
I love that. Yeah.
It's
yeah.
pretty cool.
And even those points that can be, because I don't want to pretend that there's never any anxiety in trying to live in this way in terms of it from following an intention, but like the anxiety of us trying to find the right venue.
Yeah.
There was some anxiety there because, we had a limited number of places that we could choose from in terms of the venue space and the location that met a specific need. And so it's sort of like, oh my goodness, is this one good? And is this one not good? And it was back and forth a little bit. But even that, when it's aligned with where your intention was, because our intention was, the reason there was anxiety around it is because our intention was so strong that this be a space that's comfortable for everybody, that's accessible for everybody, that's safe for everybody. And so trying to get those things in line can be a little anxiety provoking. But when you could track back to that, it's more about the intention that's set than the physical location, than the actual house, that we're going to create this regardless of where we land. That goes away. But I will say, once we did have the house figured out, it did feel like there was a sense of relief there. It's like, this is it. Okay, so that goal was met. That box was checked. Yeah. Now we can move to the next step.
Well, and what was funny was we started out even trying to look at some hotels, and the way that hotels handle booking is so corporate and so structured and so rigid. And it just like everything. I finally reached out to Jonathan. I was like, this is not the right way to go. We're not doing this way. And we started looking at different things. And I think what I wanted to, why I'm bringing that up to you when you're talking about the anxiety of it is we had a filter. We had an intention that we were filtering everything through. And so it was pretty easy and pretty clear to just say, no, this isn't right. No, that's not right. No, this isn't right. And I mean, there was one place you sent me and I was like, I don't know, this one's just not right. And I don't even know why.
It just doesn't feel right. Yeah.
Does not pass the vibe check.
Yeah.
So even though maybe you had more anxiety about it than I did, I think I had more fatigue.
Yeah.
Around finding a place. I wouldn't even call it anxiety. It was more like fatigue, like, oh, can the right place just show up, please. And it did.
Yeah. But that's such a good example. That situation's such a good example of if you have a goal that's either not tracking with an intention or is misaligned with an intention, often when you reach that point of frustration, you give up.
Yeah.
That's when the path stops. But when you are aligned, it's much easier because you keep tracking back to your why. You keep tracking back to what truly motivates you, and you don't give up. You don't stop. Mm-hmm. It's even though I'm frustrated or I'm anxious or I'm fatigued, I don't stop. I'm continuing to work toward that because it's aligned with my intention. I know my why or my whys.
I did think about like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. Like,
yeah, but you did. You did.
I did. I ended up clearing a morning in my calendar, and I just like went through every possibility, ran every number. And then I said, okay, these are the ones that we have to pick from. And then you ordered them. And then we made the final call, and then we got it done. And the reason I bring that up is because there's this, I want to carry it through from intention to there were actual physical. It's not like we floated through creation. We actually took actions and we made commitments around it. We set goals. We had time specific things, but we didn't lead with it. That wasn't the driving force behind it. It was those were the actions that were taken as a result of wanting to create the dream, the intention.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that was well stated.
And then I think you have one more.
I said, I intend to approach my business with joy, creativity, and curiosity. So sounds a little warm and fluffy, but it's actually a really motivational piece of how to build a business. So a rigid goal around that is I will complete 3 projects this month. So something that's super time dependent. I'm going to get A, B, and C done by this time. Well, again, I say that out loud and I get a clenching in my stomach of, oh man, it's almost the end of the year. You know, I've got all these other things to work around, especially those of you that work for yourself and balance multiple projects at the same time. When we get locked into something without taking into consideration context and what else is going on logistically and emotionally and physically with ourselves, then it becomes a chore and a lot less likely to happen, and a lot less likely to happen in the most effective way possible. But when you set an intention that everything that you do, as you're going to look for the joy in it, you're going to try and be creative, which creativity is all about being flexible and adaptable, and you're going to stay curious. And as I think I've talked about this before, curiosity is what drives our motivation. When we cease to be curious, we get bored. We get into overwhelm. We go to shutdown. So keeping an attitude, keeping a mindset of finding the joy, staying creative, and finding the curiosity, staying curious, will help you drive to the completion of said projects. Now, maybe you have to adjust so that you're not getting 3 done in a month. You're getting 2 done and springboarding into the 3rd or whatever it is based on realistic demands of the time. But even the adjustments become less anxiety provoking, are less weighty because you're staying in alignment with your intention, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was just thinking about from the corporate standpoint, I think that this specificity that has become the norm is all about being able to track metrics and performance. And we do that in our schools. We do that in our corporations. We do that in everything, is like make sure everything's measurable so we know we're doing a good job.
I actually had a consulting client, but a corporate client say to me one time, I don't really care about quality at this point. I care about completion. Talk about taking the wind out of your sails. I was just sort of like, okay, so maybe I'm going to have to rethink this client. But I think we get into that place with finishing a goal. So, well, at least we're done. At least we're done. We made it to a finish line. It's not what I wanted. It's not in alignment with who I am and what I want to produce, but it's done. Well, there's something very, very wrong with that. When we're so tied up on the completion.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you're about to say.
You're like, you know what I'm about to say?
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. And okay, I'm going to say it anyway.
Say it. Let's say it.
So there's that balance, right? Between the perfectionist. I think perfectionists have to tell themselves like done is better than perfect. And so I've adopted a 1.0, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4
yes, and
mentality.
From a language standpoint, though, just to be clear, there's a difference between perfection and quality. Our perfection and alignment with, what your intention to produce. Like, I want to produce something that's understandable, that's useful, and that is coherent. So
making a note, perfection versus quality gets to be another podcast, because this is what happens to us is we go down a rabbit hole and then we have something else that we have to talk about.
Bada boom.
Right?
Now we got to talk about that.
Yeah. Like now we have to talk about that.
Yeah.
So I hope that these examples that we've given you today, and this can apply to family, like date night, or family time. And I know you had made mention to me, Jonathan, about how people like make these rigid things. Like I have to have 2 hours of uninterrupted time with my family. I have to have, and then I'm thinking of the moms who like create these magical days. Or dads, magical days that you're going to have. And then like, somebody's crying, somebody's puking, like, and then you're like, because you've set this goal and they are messing with the goal.
And now it's ruined. My goal is ruined.
But really in every moment, thinking about what your intention is to have quality time. And so if that looks like being present and supporting your kid while they don't feel well, or they're having a really tough moment with some big feelings, being in that intention of being present and supportive and compassionate, it's the same thing, but it's just done in a much more flexible way, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Lose the rigidity, keep the creativity and the flexibility, adaptability, and makes a difference across the board, a positive difference across the board.
Yeah. So I, from time to time, and I know you do too as well, Jonathan, get feedback from people on something that landed with them. And I want to invite you to DM me on Instagram at Alicia St. G with if this landed for you, if something touched your heart, if you realize that maybe a goal that you've been setting is frustrating you and it's been making you feel bad. And now maybe you have a different way that you want to approach it. Just let us know, because it fuels us. It fuels our hearts. It touches our heart when we hear from you and we know that it's making a difference. So with all of that being said, I'm sending you so much love.
Be well, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Conscious Edge podcast. Make sure you subscribe and take a moment to be kind and share this episode with someone you care about. Leave a review to help us bring more compassionate leaders building businesses and creating wealth to the table. And for show notes, head over to consciousedge.com/podcast. This podcast and the linked materials are presented solely for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes and should not be taken as personal or medical advice or any kind of mental health treatment. Please consult a medical or mental health professional if you feel you need such services. Please be advised that all investing and entrepreneurial endeavors involve risk, and the use of the education and information on this podcast and linked materials is at the user's own risk.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.